Welcome to Ticker Talk with hosts Max and Kate, podcasting from Treetown in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Ticker Talk shares the everyday success stories and science behind the heart rate-based functional aerobic fitness training practiced at CrossFit Treetown. Max and Kate explore the research, science, and practical experiences behind Ticker Training, a program developed by Max for just about everyone. Your grandma, your cousin who runs marathons, and you. In this series, we'll explore what exactly heart rate-based functional aerobic fitness is, how what you eat affects how you move and how you feel, what tools to use in tracking progress, and how to fit training into your everyday life. Join us and learn something new to make a healthier you. Pace yourself.
Action.
Welcome to the Ticker Studio. Kate and Max in today.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome.
So I want to talk a little bit today about our metabolic testing.
Yeah, sweet.
So we use the Pinoy metabolic analyzer, mask over face, backpack tester, ride an assault bike at increasing RPMs to get a fancy measurement readout on the computer.
Right.
So one of the metrics that we measure in metabolic testing is the RER.
Right.
Let's define what that RER is.
Right. That's your respiratory exchange ratio. Right. You want to dive in a little bit more on that, Kate?
Well, one of the measurements that why we wear a mask while we're riding the bike is to measure the volume of oxygen that comes in and then the ratio of the carbon dioxide that comes back out.
Right. And that's measuring stress, essentially, right?
Right. I mean, if I think about it in, pedestrian terms, breathing in oxygen, huffing out carbon dioxide, when the intensity or stress of my walk, increases, like going up a hill, I'm definitely breathing harder. So I'm breathing in oxygen, but also breathing out a lot more carbon dioxide.
Right. So we can assume that that is a more stressful situation, yes?
Yes.
Okay. So when we talk about RER and we talk about lower numbers in RER, we're reducing stress, correct?
Right. A lower RER means more oxygen in, less carbon dioxide out.
Got it. All right. So we've just got a little thing up here on our screen. I'll just pull it up just to kind of give everybody a sense or an idea here. What is stress or intensity in a metabolic test? It's a relationship between oxygen inhaled and carbon dioxide exhaled.
So the number we look at on our little screen while we're doing a test and then on the results screen on the computer are those point numbers, 0.7, 0.86, 1.0 RER. And that's just the relationship of how much oxygen to how much carbon dioxide.
Correct. So generally what we see when we first put the mask on for somebody that is well-trained and metabolically healthy and efficient, right, we see 0.70 or lower as an RER, and that's just kind of equal to low stress. Mm-hmm. Okay, 0.86, this is your crossover. This is where you start pulling the majority of your fuel from carbohydrates and you're starting to reduce the amount of fat you pull. That's 0.86 RER. We just consider that moderate stress. That's around your aerobic threshold. Okay. And then the other number that we like to look at is the 1.0 RER, and that's essentially your anaerobic threshold, and that's when you're pretty much your cells are hyperventilating, right? That's a high stress situation. You are working really, really hard.
When we look at this on a Pinoy readout, so do we have one of those?
Yeah.
On the results sheet on the top. When we talk about, so we're going to talk a lot about the aerobic and the anaerobic and fat and oxygen, all within like the same realm. So when you are using more oxygen, then your body is using fat as a fuel source.
Correct.
And that is just, it's sustainable.
Yes.
When you switch over to using carbohydrates as a fuel source, you have to off-gas all the heat and chemical reactions and everything that happens. So you need the bigger hole. Your mouth needs to be open to huff out more CO2.
Right. When you're fueling yourself with fats, you exhale less CO2.
Right.
It's a less intense or a less stressful environment for your body, for your cells to live life or to do work at. So
as we go through these charts, we may use all those words interchangeably. So we have
What do you mean?
The oxygen and the fat and the carbon dioxide.
Yeah, we want people to kind of understand if we use the term fat as a fuel source, we want you to also understand that you're using oxygen more efficiently.
You're breathing pretty easily.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's just a less stressful situation.
Right.
Why do we want to see lower RERs?
Less stress.
Less stress, easier to recover, less inflammation, more efficient, sustainable work.
Why would you want to breathe more oxygen easier?
Correct, right?
Man,
Okay, good.
mind blown.
All right.
So,
we're just going to kind of quickly go over like a before and after here with an athlete.
what are we trying? So, as we do these tests, so we get these tests and we're looking at this RER. RER is oxygen to carbon dioxide.
Correct.
And we use these numbers to define intensity for our athletes.
Correct.
So if I think of intensity in breathing, the minute that it becomes hard to breathe in enough oxygen to balance out the carbon dioxide that I'm exhaling, running's an easy example of this. When it gets hard to take a deep breath, then that would be a pretty intense effort.
Correct.
So what we're doing is figuring out at what point, maybe even it doesn't feel like it's overly intense yet, but what that relative intensity is on your system.
Right. And we're trying to define intensity for people so they know where they should train.
Right.
So they don't overwork themselves and so they can actually improve their true aerobic capacity and their ability to do sustainable work.
Right.
Because just coming in and doing hard work, quote unquote, all the time is not going to necessarily improve your total work capacity or your aerobic capacity. It will in the short term. If you're a new athlete, doing anything of any sort will have an improvement, but long term, you need to be understanding what sustainable work is for you, and to improve it, you have to train it.
And what your body is deciding in the moment what is sustainable and what is not.
Correct.
Because it may not be relative to how you feel necessarily.
And by understanding your RER and when you pull the most fat or utilize oxygen the best, by understanding that, we can train there and then improve it over time. Because we've seen lots of people come in here that are well-trained or experienced athletes, and they are not efficient at all.
Right.
Right. So
they're just really good at going really hard.
And they also might actually eat relatively good, quote unquote. Right.
Yeah.
So what all affects RER? What can make things more stressful or less stressful let's just start with at rest, right? How do we improve our RER at rest?
Well, if RER is a measurement of stress, the first thing that comes to my mind is life stress.
Sure. Absolutely.
One major life stressor is sleep.
Sleep. Yep. So if we improve our sleep quality, RERs can go down.
Absolutely.
Right. We can reduce our training stress.
Right.
Right. So apply
by defining relative intensity.
Very good from your RER. Food, of course.
Well, right, because we were talking about burning fat versus burning carbohydrates. So here comes in that like oxygen to fat and carbohydrates to CO2.
Right.
And we can't get around the fact of, what you're fueling yourself with.
Right. So if you're a carbohydrate dependent individual. Right. Meaning that the minute you do anything, laundry, workout, train, you start utilizing carbohydrates at a high rate. What does that mean for rest and work? High stress, right? It's a high output. A lot of heat's given off. It's short term. You're going to have to refuel yourself constantly.
That's stressful, finding snacks everywhere you go.
Correct. You're going to have to.
Going to gas stations.
Exactly. Okay. So by understanding what these RER numbers are in your training and spending time at these specific heart rate zones that are defined by your RER, you can improve your efficiency and your sustainable work.
Sure.
Okay. So what does that look like? Remember on these tests that we're performing, it's an on-ramp test. It's the same test. We do them on an assault bike. You start at 35 RPMs and you build intensity throughout.
Until you can build no more.
Or until we kind of see what we're looking for.
So this is a good controlled test, and we will analyze this in a second. But when we first started talking about intensity versus, before we have these numbers, the raw data, I used to tell our athletes, take everything you can do going all out right now. All you have, go. 3, 2, 1, on any sort of workout you decide to do. That's your best effort. Now, what if you can take that best effort and make it so that you don't have to lay on the floor and recover from it?
Correct. Or you could do another really hard effort very shortly
So then, like that was your ceiling. That was the best you can do. If you make that sustainable, then what are you capable of? Correct. As you have to go up and up and up? It just opens up the ceiling of possibilities.
Yep.
So on a ramp up test, when we do the first test, the baseline, we start at 35 and we go all the way up to whenever the athlete fails. We analyze that. We give them zones. This is where, your relative intensity is right now. This is where we want you to train this heart rate. And then quite often, so often later, we go through and we do a repeat test. So this athlete had one test, trained, and then had a repeat test.
Yep. So let's go real quick back to this other slide here. Just as a reminder, RER is a stress management, right? Oxygen in, CO2 out. So we're going to start with RER of 0.70 would be a low stress situation. 0.75 is where you start pulling a little bit of carbohydrates and you're done with utilizing just fat. So this here, where the green is, you can see that this isn't that 0.75 is an RER. So you can see here when he just started, he was about 0.68. And as the test goes on, you can see his RER climbing, right? So right about here, he starts pulling some carbohydrates, and you can see that in relationship to these graphs here. This is carbohydrates in blue, fats are in red. Okay, so you can kind of see what happens as he gets more intense or his heart rate rises. You can see the carbohydrates are pulled. So if we're looking at let's start with the 0.76 number being
nice sustainable effort.
Yep. This is where he's pulling the most fat, the least amount of carbohydrates. He's utilizing oxygen for his primary fuel source still, but he's almost done doing that.
And the interesting thing, he's going 35, 45 RPMs on an assault bike.
Correct.
That's pretty slow. That's like walking.
He's,
and that's not walking up a hill.
Correct. But it's again, this is life though.
Absolutely. And he feels great. He's like, all right, we got this. I can do this forever.
This is his life now. That's at about second 257 on his first test. Okay. So let's just compare that same 0.76 RER on his second test here. You can see he's holding 0.75, 0.76. Past, that's a little bit right around 305.
Oh, the seconds are going up.
Yep, you can see that a little bit that he's been able to pull fat as his primary fuel source just a little bit longer. Let's just make sure that we are being accurate on that. Yeah, so he's definitely, he's pulling it at second 200 really.
And you can see on that graph on the bottom right there where all of a sudden that blue line takes a sharp uptick.
Yep.
Okay. And that's just where he needed more carbs to be able to do the work. His body has equated like, ooh, we're working out, breathe in oxygen, huff out all of those, the CO2. It's time to go.
Okay, so let's just go back to our graph here again, our other slides. So remember stress management. So he's able to do more work over a longer period of time with less stress. Okay, now let's look at his 0.86 RER. This is when his crossover begins, when he's going full sugar mode.
So most athletes I found report during this test when they hit that 0.8. So not quite up to that aerobic threshold, but kind of where on a graph, go to a graph, you can see both lines come together for like this. He doesn't have a very big, maybe on that second test. He's got an area where he has a stripe of both red and blue. Mm-hmm. And that's when they say, I could do this forever.
Yeah, they feel really good, right? They've pulled enough sugar to be able to sustain a fair bit of work. They're actually starting to breathe a little bit, probably open their mouth.
It's like 3, 2, 1, go pace.
Right.
Like, here we go. Clock hits go. This, I'm going to win.
Yeah.
And they all say they could do it forever. However,
right.
Spoiler alert.
Right.
The fat calories that they're burning at that moment
is dropping. So
they cost more than the carbohydrate calories.
Let's go back here a little bit, Kate, to our 0.86, and let's find that on his first graph, because we are trying to keep with our 0.8 with our RERs.
Right. So 0.80 feels pretty good. 0.86 is kind of where that
this is crossover, right? So I just want to show that his first test here, 0.86, was very consistent around second 400. Mm-hmm. You can see right around 4 to 407. Okay, on this second test, we're still at 0.80. He doesn't hit 0.86.
So you can see on the bottom when those two lines start to come together. So 0.80 is where you got a pretty even spread, and then 0.86 is where the blue crosses over the red.
So he's definitely here at second 530. Right? What were we before?
400.
400. So that's pretty significant. So he's able to go longer with less stress.
Okay. So 400 to 530 right there. I mean, those are seconds.
Those are seconds.
So that's a couple minutes.
And let's just see what that is heart rate wise. On the after, it's 167. On the before, it was 151. Right? So keep in mind, these are numbers that are measuring stress. So before at 151 was the same stress that he is now enduring at 167. That's a significant number to understand.
Right. We haven't talked about heart rate at all. So what we use the heart rate monitor through this because we can guide him to work at a specific heart rate where we know his stress is going to be
correct,
consistent.
Right. So on a daily basis, if he comes in here and we tell him to train, between for him, we want him training between 121 and avoid going over 167, right?
Right.
Okay, so that's a significant amount of work that he can do. You can see from this graph the amount of fat that he'll pull during that time.
Yeah.
So you can see here this 167 here for a heart rate. His carbohydrates significantly increase and his fat is dropping off. So again, why do we want to train or understand what these RER mean? We're just managing stress.
Right. Meaning his everyday training. We're not talking about testing. We're not talking about talking about everyday, aerobic training that's going to translate directly into him having sustainability in his life.
Correct. And we're just trying to define today what RER means and why it's important for people to understand. Let's just finish this last bit off here.
Well, we didn't talk about the end. We got to 0.86, but
what
happens at the end?
So just as a reminder here, we're going to talk about 1.0 RER. This is a high stress and anaerobic threshold. This is where people generally like to train between 0.86 and 1.0 and above.
Speak for yourself.
This gives people a lot of quote unquote value. It makes them feel like they've earned their fitness, like they've done some real work for the day. This leaves you flat on your back at the end of the session, right? And that should not be your goal when you're trying to improve your overall health and your overall longevity and your true fitness or health.
I think the way to put it is moderate to high stress is important in any training protocol when applied in appropriate doses.
Sure.
Just like in life. I mean, that's how you adapt to change.
Sure.
I would not want to live my life under moderate to high stress every single day.
Right, because let's also talk about the fact that many people, both conditioned and unconditioned, will start this test at above 1.0 or very close to it.
Absolutely, because exercise is stress.
Right.
Which, if you lived in a bubble and exercise was your only stress,
right, that'd be great.
You could make the exercise the stressful part of your day.
Sure, and then spend the rest of the day recovering and eating and massage and all that other nonsense that goes along with it. But you're still not going to be necessarily as good as you could have been. Right?
Absolutely.
So remember, we want to see reductions in this 1.0 RER, and that is what we are finding through our programming to be very effective of doing. Okay.
Because high stress is not sustainable over a long period of time. And despite what we would like to think, our lives go on for a lot longer periods of time, our days, than the 12 minutes or 6 minutes or 2 minutes in the gym.
Correct. All right, so let's look at this real quick for this individual. At second 596, we see RER of 1 for the first time. He pulls it back under control here for a little bit, but 635 and on, he is essentially hyperventilating. He does make it a fair bit into that.
He's working hard. I mean, that's go.
Let's find that was
Win.
what was the second there? Around second 600.
Okay.
Okay, at second 600, we're only at 0.91 here.
And you can see that in that bottom graph where the red never truly goes all the way flat like it does on the first test. So he has adapted to being able to be a little bit more efficient all the way through the end. And that's just by being more efficient longer throughout this test.
So now he's at second 741 before he hits an RER of hyperventilating.
And then he stopped.
And that's okay.
Right.
He recognizes that this is really hard work before he was conditioned to handle it. Now, what does this mean? This is a really good test for this athlete. He's earned the right to have a little bit of threshold. You know what I mean? He's pushed this to the right, or this crossover to the right, probably as far as he can, or very, very close.
Yeah.
Now, to continue to move it to the right and to get results for performance, maybe we can add a little bit of harder work in, but
Otherwise, his job is to do as much work as he can while he's being efficient. So that's getting stronger, getting more skilled, and learning everything. So at some point, he never really has to train unless he has decided that he wants that intensity. And then he gets to
let's just make
that appropriate.
Let's just make it so he can do Helen or any other kind of crazy CrossFit benchmark below 167 and continue to improve his score at that.
Yeah.
You know, and instead of making him do a whole bunch of work at 175 to 180 beats where it's not sustainable and it's actually causing him a bunch more stress and strain.
Right.
Okay. All right. Kate, anything else? Are we, can we wrap this thing up? We did 20 minutes. We almost made it under 20.
Almost.
All right.
All right. Good talk.
If you have any questions about RER or coming in to get your metabolic test done, give us an email at tickertrained@gmail.com. You can get through us to our website at tickertrained.com or crossfittreetown.com. We'd love to have you come in and learn what your RER numbers mean. Thanks, Kate.
Yep.